It's 2 in the morning. You're there, scrolling through your phone feed in the darkness, and suddenly, that strange feeling hits you. Like you're watching your own life from the outside and thinking, what's the point of all this? I'm going to spend my entire life trying to please people I don't even like. For what? Wake up every day to work at something I just tolerate, but see no purpose in. Pretend my life is interesting, while everyone else seems happier than me. Appear to have something important to contribute when I actually feel completely insignificant. Seriously. What's the meaning of life? Why do I exist? I was literally the most successful person of my time, perhaps of all times. I had riches that would make any current billionaire look middle class, knowledge that made me a global reference, absolute political power, relationships. Well, I had 700 wives and 300 concubines. I built palaces, gardens, temples that became wonders of the ancient world. By any metric of success you can imagine, I was at the absolute top. And you know what happened when I got there? The same feeling you're having right now. I looked at all of that and thought, so what? What now? I know exactly what that feeling is like. I spent decades of my life asking myself the same question. And if you've stayed this far, it's because you're asking it too. In the next few minutes, I'm going to tell you exactly what I discovered after experiencing literally everything life can offer. And spoiler alert, it's not what you expect. I'm going to explain why that feeling of emptiness you feel isn't a flaw, it's design. Why nothing you achieve externally will fill what's missing inside. And most importantly, I'm going to give you the simplest and most difficult answer to that question that keeps you awake. But before I get there, I need to show you some things. Because if you don't understand where I'm speaking from, you'll think this is just another motivational speech. And it definitely isn't. That restlessness eating away at you inside doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means something is working. You prostrate yourselves before your technology titans, men who measure their wealth in stocks, whose riches fluctuate at the mercy of a volatile market. But I measured mine with solid gold and precious stones. In a single year, my kingdom received approximately 21 tons of pure gold. If we consider the accumulated wealth, which included ivory, spices, and precious stones, my personal fortune would be incalculable, possibly the greatest in human history. Some historians and economists dare estimate my accumulated value in trillions of adjusted dollars. I was the apex of the human pyramid. You have the internet, artificial intelligence, algorithms, all the world's knowledge at your fingertips. I had all the wise men of the East in my palace. My wisdom, tested by the riddles of queens. I knew everything it was possible to know in my era, from botany, from the cedar that is in Lebanon to the hyssop that springs out of the wall. My wisdom was a cultural and political capital that made war seem unnecessary. I negotiated with powers like the Pharaoh of Egypt and King Hiram of Tyre through agreements that guaranteed a peace and prosperity that had never been seen in Israel. I was the richest and wisest man of all. My engineering works, like the Temple of Jerusalem, covered with solid gold, the Palace of the Forest of Lebanon, and the garrison cities were the pinnacle of technology and architecture of my time. And what about pleasure? You swipe your finger across the screen on your apps, seeking a quick connection, brief relief from loneliness. I did not seek ephemerality. I had 700 wives and 300 concubines. I could have any woman I desired, from any kingdom, at any time. I gave myself to all the pleasures of the flesh without restriction. Total pleasure brought me the frustration that desire never is satisfied. I emptied all the cups, that of knowledge, that of pleasure, and mainly that of the great work. But here lies the tragedy of my wisdom. I looked at all the accumulated gold, at the eternal brilliance of my temple, and at the vastness of my kingdom, and saw only the cycle. The sun rises and the sun sets, and hastens to return to its place. And man? My conclusion is not that of a defeated man, but of the man who exhausted all possibilities under heaven. The gold was pure, but the soul remained empty. The wealth was great, but it did not buy purpose. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. Therefore, my verdict, which continues echoing over your modern existence, is the realization that emerges from all human experience. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. There is a word, more than millennial, that unveiled the curtain of my understanding. In its essence lies not the rigidity of vanity, but rather the lightness and ephemerality of Hebel, the warm vapor that dissolves. From your lips in the cold air, the smoke that barely forms before vanishing. Your frenzy of today, the algorithm that ignores you, the wound of a fleeting comment, the photograph that didn't gather the expected likes. All of this is Hebel. Important and urgent in the present moment, but invisible to the eye of eternity. But this is not a sentence of despair. It is the key to profound relief. When the soul comprehends that most of its burdens are nothing but mist, it refuses to carry the weight of the universe. You nourish yourselves on polished images of perfect lives on crystal screens, while the soul starves emotionally. You connect with vast multitudes, but feel a loneliness sharper than that of my grandparents, who barely knew 10 neighbors by name. The paradox is that my vapors were tangible, palaces of cedar, the gleam of gold, the tyranny of power. Yours are fluid, they are digital, but the void that resonates in the chest is identical. I was not alone in this melancholic diagnosis. Centuries after my search, men continued to stumble upon the same wall of sand. Pascal saw that all entertainment is an escape. All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. You call this FOMO, the desperate fear of not being where the Hebel manifests. The French philosopher Albert Camus conceived the figure of Sisyphus, that king from Greek mythology, condemned to push a boulder up a mountain for all eternity. Each time he reached the summit, the stone rolled back down. No end, no purpose, only infinite labor. Chasing after the wind, I had already murmured the tragedy 3,000 years before he wrote it. There is a painting that condenses our dilemma. All is Vanity by Charles Gilbert. From afar, the skull, the inescapable symbol of the end. Up close, the woman beautifying herself in the mirror. We spend our lives producing ourselves for an audience that barely notices us, while we set aside the only question that matters. Who, in fact, am I when the curtains are closed and no one is watching? I tested life methodically, systematically. Work. I built empires, ordered plantations, organized vast bureaucracy. The result was burnout and the sensation of building sand castles in the rising tide. Pleasure. I surrendered to every luxury imagination could conceive. The result, a pleasure as brief as torchlight, followed by an even greater abyss. I studied from astronomy to the tiniest living being. The result, much information, but little wisdom to calm the heart. I dominated a vast empire. The result, boundless responsibility and zero inner peace. The conclusion that remained for me, which was the apex of all human wisdom, was bitter and resigned. Go, Eat your bread with joy and drink your wine with a good heart. Try to extract the juice from the small moments, for this is each one's portion under the sun. It was carpe diem with bitterness in the mouth. However, in this analysis, there was a flaw, a gap. I had, with all my earthly wisdom, only half of the equation. The German philosopher Schopenhauer, millennia later, echoed my diagnosis. Life is suffering, and happiness is merely temporary absence of pain. His solution was to deny one's own desires, renounce everything. But this was surrender, accepting defeat with no power to transform reality. Kierkegaard perceived that seeking pleasure was disguised despair, and that living only by duty was too cold. So he proposed a leap of faith, abandoning reason and throwing oneself toward the transcendent. Nietzsche declared the death of God and said we should invent our own values. But here's the problem. If we are the ones creating meaning, why this sensation of seeking something that already exists beyond us? Why do even the most convinced atheists feel this void that no self-created philosophy can fill? Here's where my philosophy hit the wall. I perfectly diagnosed the void, but couldn't explain why it existed. If we're just cosmic accidents destined to turn to dust, why do we carry an insatiable thirst for eternal meaning? Why does temporality bother us so much if we are made only to be temporary? A 1,000 years after my writings, an answer emerged that I could never have imagined. It is not philosophy woven in ancient books. It is not religion erected in temples, nor dogma shaped by the hands of society. A person. Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus of Nazareth introduced something completely unprecedented in the history of human thought. He didn't offer another religion of human effort to reach God. He offered the opposite, God reaching us. Philosophically, this is a radical rupture. If the Creator himself chooses to experience finitude, pain, rejection, and death, then our condition is no longer a problem to be solved. It's an experience to be understood from a completely new perspective. Where I saw pain as proof of life's vanity, he embraced it and transformed it into the turning point of history. Where I built palaces of cedar and gold, he chose a manger of straw. Where I flaunted crowns of precious stones, he accepted a crown of thorns. Where I sought the applause of crowds, he embraced the silence of being misunderstood. Instead of my 1,000 relationships that left me empty, he offered one relationship that fills eternally. Where I accumulated treasures that moths consumed, he became the treasure that never perishes. Death, which I called the end of all things, he crossed like someone crossing a curtain and returned to show there was life on the other side. C.S. Lewis captured this truth perfectly. If I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. Our restlessness wasn't a flaw, it was a clue, an internal GPS pointing to our true origin and destination. Pascal said we have a God-shaped void that nothing earthly can fill. Augustine declared that our hearts are restless until they rest in the eternal. But if eternal life, that which completely transcends temporality, is ontologically real, Our entire existential analysis needs to be recalibrated. We are not grains of sand destined for oblivion. We are temporal beings with the capacity to participate in the atemporal. Our brevity doesn't contradict our meaning. It may be exactly the portal through which we touch eternity. So yes, I was right about one thing. There is nothing new under the sun if your search is for earthly riches, pleasures, or conquests. But the sun I knew, that star that rose and set in an apparently purposeless cycle, wasn't the only sun. The true sun of righteousness rose over the world, and where his light touches, everything becomes new. My book is a mirror that reflects the emptiness of your searches. But it's also a compass that points to the only direction I couldn't see. The answer wasn't in the earth, in my treasures, or in my wisdom. The answer is a God who became man, so that our vanity could be redeemed, our suffering could have meaning, and our death wouldn't be the end. Now turn off that screen and try to rest. But take this with you. In Christ, life is no longer a cycle of inescapable vanity. It's a journey with an eternal destination. Your restlessness brought you here. Don't stop now. The true journey is just beginning. If your soul seeks meaning beyond the noise, subscribe and walk with us. For where truth speaks, emptiness ends.